Thanks for coming, Emily. How did this happen? How did we get here?
I saw your episode of Carol Todd. I know of Carol Todd, obviously, because of her daughter, Amanda Todd, growing up in BC in the Lower Mainland. So I watched, and it immediately kind of hit home with me.
To be able to share, your experience, and I think you're in a really interesting place to be able to talk to, people who are, around your age for what happened, and then as well as kind of parents and caregivers right now.
It kind of made me sit there for a second and think about my own situation. It was nowhere near the same, degree as what Amanda went through and what so many other people like her go through today, and even back then. But there's still a very big element of, danger that I was in.
Hi, and welcome back to Well Informed. I'm Colton Easton, and so far we've had some amazing guests on the podcast who are experts in their own fields. They offer amazingly deep insights into some very critical issues that affect our communities. But today we're taking more of a personal approach. So we're going to focus on an everyday experience that many face, but few really talk about. So joining us today is Emily, who bravely shares her story of being groomed online. A story she actually felt compelled to share after watching one of our episodes. So throughout her story, we're going to explore the broader lessons about device usage, online access, and some really critical conversations that youth and parents need to have to stay safe. This episode is all about the human side of the digital world, and we hope Emily's insights today can help others facing similar challenges. So thanks for watching and listening. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thanks for coming, Emily.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, how did this happen? How did we get here?
I saw your episode of Carol Todd on YouTube. I saw you promote it on your Instagram. And I know of Carol Todd, obviously, because of her daughter, Amanda Todd, growing up in BC in the Lower Mainland. So I watched, and it immediately kind of hit home with me because I related and I knew of Amanda Todd's story. You and I know each other through my boyfriend, which is fun. Just met each other this year.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we've known each other for a little bit close to the mic too. And yeah, it was really interesting when you reached out to me because number one, it's a really, unfortunately, not that unique of an experience, which is horrible to hear. But to be able to share, your experience, and I think you're in a really interesting place to be able to talk to, people who are, around your age for what happened, and then as well as kind of parents and caregivers right now, because there's going to be different walks of life listening to this, whether it's those who are the caregivers and parents and those who maybe are, in that high school situation or getting into from elementary to secondary school. And I think one of the important things that we really touch on is like what is out there now and then what was going on back then. So, we had a FaceTime call a couple days ago where you were sharing your information and like, your experience, because I wanted to, make sure, what do we have here? Like what's going on? Because all of our other guests so far have been like, I've worked with them for years, right?
Totally,
so I have such a good relationship with them. And as you were sharing your story, I pretty much cut the conversation because I was like, hold on, like we got to wait till, we got to bring this all here. Because there was a lot of good information. And as you were going, I'm like, there's so many things that, I want to be able to share with you and as well, and, where else we can share that information. So, so thank you for reaching out to me and thank you for being here. So, yeah. So what, I guess, cause you watched Carol's episode and obviously something resonated within that. So what were some of those things?
Well, as I said, like I've known about Amanda because of, just being in BC alone. I mean, her situation is worldwide now. Like it's, known around the world. Obviously it's touched a lot of hearts, and her video obviously has touched a lot of hearts and has raised a lot of awareness, and Carol has done such a great job in doing that until today and on and on and on. But I grew up kind of when technology was not new, but it was still not known. And I was in high school when Snapchat was a thing, just became a thing. And
So that was like right 2011-ish?
I started high school 2014.
Okay.
Early 2014. Grade 6 and 7 was, 2011, 2012.
Because, I remember that's when Snapchat came out, was that 2011? And
Yeah.
I think I got it in 2013. And
Yeah.
I was like, okay.
Yeah, exactly. So it was a new thing. It was a fun new app for us kids.
Yeah.
And Carol's video, her talking about the dangers of sextortion today and how it's still very prevalent, and there's so many different avenues that these predators are taking within the new advances of technology we're seeing every day.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, remember back then when I was freshly 13 and I got groomed?
Yeah.
And I was, it hit home to see that people were still having these types of conversations, especially knowing you personally. I was like, yay, Colton. And it kind of made me sit there for a second and think about my own situation. It was nowhere near the same, degree as what Amanda went through and what so many other people like her go through today. And
Mm-hmm.
even back then. But there's still a very big element of, danger that I was in. And I was a victim. It's weird for me to say that even today,
Mm-hmm.
but I've like grown to terms with it that, you know what, I am and was a victim back then. And it was of, typical, I hate using the word typical, but it was like Class A grooming. It was, you look at an example of sexual grooming, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Even though the person was not with me in person,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it has a lot to do with, the relationships that you have in person, in real life,
Mm-hmm.
and, the expectations of what a real relationship is and what it should be. But, if you want to kind of talk about your experience growing up and your exposure to technology,
Mm-hmm.
first time you kind of got a cell phone, what was that experience like, and going from there? Because, Carol shared with me after our podcast was
Mm-hmm.
a Facebook group called Parenting in a Tech World.
Okay.
And I regret joining that group because there's some of the scariest questions from parents on
I
there,
bet.
right?
Yeah, I bet.
Saying, we got our kid a iPhone at age 8 and now they're 12 years old, and now we're realizing that they're talking to all these people online. It's like a now what do we do situation. So, but I'm curious, like, what was your kind of first exposure experience with technology, and what kind of led down that pathway?
Well, my household, so I grew up with 2 older siblings in the house. I was the youngest. I was a baby. And it was a mixed family, so my 2 older siblings were from my mom's previous marriage. I was from my mom and my dad. So intermingling of ages and generations. My siblings, they didn't grow up with the same kind of emerging stuff as I did. My siblings are 7 and 6 years older than me, so quite a bit of an age gap. So I grew up with, a TV in the house, and then all of a sudden we got the family computer, and it was in the den in our house, and I would sit on there for hours, like playing little games. There used to be a website, well, it's still a thing, but called Wattpad, which is like a writing site where a lot of people write fan fiction.
Yes, very familiar with Wattpad,
We love
unfortunately. For other reasons, not because of the fan fiction, but from other things that we've seen.
And that's a whole thing in itself.
Yeah.
That's crazy that you bring that up, because I was like, I didn't even think of this before, but I'd like reading smut at age 9.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunately not even just with Wattpad, the exposure that everybody gets, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But even there, with Wattpad, we've seen like manifestos being released.
Okay.
So like, not fun stuff.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. That's really interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of Wattpad's been around for a while.
A long time.
Because we first kind of understood like the ramifications of it, I think 2021, 2022.
Okay.
But even as you were saying, like 2011, 2012
like 10,
era. Yeah.
2010. Yeah, I was on there because it was a competition between, there's like 2, obviously Tumblr, and then there was one other like fan fiction site that I can't remember the name of, but it was up there, And yeah, so I'd sit there in the den and watch YouTube. I would record my own YouTube videos. So I have a YouTube channel out there.
You don't have to say it.
In the ether. I'm not going to say it.
Yeah.
It has something to do with webkins.
Right.
Because I love webkins.
Yeah.
But I used to screen record like little 9-year-old me. I used to screen record our family computer, and I would go on Microsoft Paint, and I would just like type out inspirational quotes.
No way.
To like put music behind it. Like
Yeah.
I'd go on YouTube, click the music, hit screen record, go on Paint. It's so
Wow. You were like the early pioneers of digital
Yeah.
content creation there.
I guess, yeah. But that's where it kind of started with me on the family computer. And then going into elementary school, I was new. I was a new kid at the elementary school, and everyone had iPod touches, and everyone had something to listen to their music on, or like make videos of each other. Video Star was a huge thing back then, which was like, it was just like you could record videos and put filters on it and make it kind of like a music video.
Okay.
It wasn't like a social platform, but it was, people will know what I'm talking about. People know Video Star.
All right.
But yeah, so it was everything was so new and everything was so exciting. So all my friends had something, and my parents growing up, they were cautious, I think, to themselves. They didn't outwardly show that to me, but I think because my mom had 2 older kids, I grew up with my 2 older siblings, they were already kind of like put off by it, I guess you could say.
Sure.
Because, you know, my siblings were very tumultuous growing up into their adulthood. They made quite a few bad decisions that I was a witness to. And so I think my parents, they didn't want there to be any avenue where there could be a mistake, or any avenue where, you know, they had to have a tough conversation with me, or, you know, have to go through another sticky situation with another kid.
Right, because they've had those experiences beforehand, and they're trying to mitigate, I guess, the experiences they've already witnessed and been a part of. And in comes brand new technology, internet access, and there's a lot that even today folks don't know.
Totally.
So,
totally.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and so I flash forward a little bit. I got my first iPod Touch after begging my mom. I remember she was driving me to school one morning, and I sat there and I was like, "Mom, please, just an iPod, just so I can listen to music." Like, I was begging her, and then they caved. I think my dad was a bit more of a pushover when it came to me, so they caved. I got an iPod Touch. We would use it in class. The elementary school that I went to was very technology, I guess you could say, progressive. They wanted to embrace it. We were like, this is the age where laptops and iPads were first starting to come into schools.
Okay.
Yes.
So like, school-based laptops, school-based iPads, and those are ones that like kids get sent home with, and you have access to this, right?
Yeah. So I had elementary school that I went to prior. We had laptops, full internet access. They didn't have the same like applications on it. Like that's where we learned to type. We had like the typing game on the computer. This second elementary school, in grade 6 we had laptops, but there wasn't enough for all the students. So our principal, love this principal to this day, he created something called the Tech Club. And it was for, I think there was only like 9 or 10 of us. It was a pretty small group of us. And he gathered us, I think, once a week. And yeah, he called it Tech Club. And we would sit in the computer lab he invited us to bring any forms of technology that we had. So if anyone had an iPod Touch, if anyone had their own laptop, an iPad, whatever, you could bring it in, and we'll do. I mean, we filmed the Harlem Shake with my principal.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That's a old trend.
Yeah. So we did the Harlem Shake. Like, it was just that type of thing. Like, that school is trying to get ahead of it to take advantage of it. To
say, look how progressive we are. Here's all these things that we're doing that are embracing technology.
Yeah. Like, they had a Twitter, like all that stuff. Like. And it was fun. Like, one of the videos on my YouTube channel is like a little, kind of, oh my goodness, like animated template that we found online, and he was like, make your own video, you put a voiceover on it and you can make the character dance. So that was from Tech Club.
Right.
Grade 7, they bring in the iPads, and yes, we brought them home. They were a lot more restricted because Apple has so much more parental restrictions that you can put on devices. So that was a lot more restrictive, but in between grade 6 and grade 7 of getting my iPod Touch and getting the iPad for school, I got my iPod Touch taken away. Because we can thank Omegle for that.
Good old Omegle.
Yeah, this is where the ball starts rolling.
You could go on Omegle on your iPod Touch?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It was just a website.
Yeah, so I guess so. I forgot that those things had the cameras and everything.
Yeah.
It's been a while since I've held an iPod Touch.
Yeah,
I have a question though for you. When you were selling your parents on the idea of the iPod Touch, you knew the capabilities of it.
I think I think it was, I did.
Yeah.
But I didn't want it for that reason.
So it was really just the actual music.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
As a kid, like, it makes sense with who I am today.
Yes.
Of
course.
Was obsessed with music. I had an iPod Nano, and I would hook it up to my little iHome in my room.
Awesome.
And I'd blast music all day. Kind of going back to childhood, just to tie it in together, I was very independent. I would stay in my room all day by myself. Once in a while, I'd go outside and play with the neighbors, but I was very independent. And my parents, they didn't have to wonder where I was because they knew where I was. It was that type of situation.
So there is definitely a huge element. I only ask because a lot of the times when we do talk to parents and share some resources, we get them to ask the questions, what is the reason why you want this thing? And obviously for music and they were making leaps and bounds in the amount of songs you could hold on the iPod. And I was like, wow, revolutionary, right? With all that. So no, that makes sense. And again, for those who don't know, Emily and I are in a music club.
Yes, we are.
So we're both very big fans of music. So that tracks.
Yes, it's been since day one.
Yeah. But then Omegle happens. And so how did you find out about Omegle?
It was, I don't think I can pinpoint a certain moment that I can, recollect. But, all my friends were on something. All my friends were on something. And on the website, on the different types of websites back in the day, the ads, on the sides of the screen.
Right.
It didn't matter if you were on math games or
cool math
games or something. There would be ads for anything on the sides of the screen. This is just what I can picture in my head. So maybe something like that, or
a friend told you or something.
Friend told me, or I saw my siblings talked about it and were like, don't do this, and then of course I go look at it. I can't pinpoint the exact moment, but it doesn't surprise me that I heard about it so easily.
Everybody finds their way to it, and even me in high school, when Omegle was first out, before Omegle was chat roulette.
Yep.
And that was everybody knew ew, don't go on there. And then I guess Omegle was kind of branded as it's not like chat roulette. That's exactly it's exactly like chat roulette, right? And that was in 2009. Where I remember going on that with the guys. And was just this is terrible website.
Seeing body parts and weirdness.
And we didn't even have iPod touches. I mean, I'm sure we did, but I just remember specifically on actual laptops and computers. And I was like, this is weird.
Yes. And you know what? Now that we're talking about it, I used to watch this YouTuber, and I can't remember his name, but he used to do chat roulette music videos. And he used to do it on chat roulette and Omegle. So I wonder if that's where I first saw it. Because as me and my den with the family computer always on YouTube. He used to go on chat roulette and make music videos and prank people with lip syncing to songs and stuff like that. So that's probably how I heard of it. But Omegle, that was a thing. And I wouldn't go on the video setting. I would only do the text chat.
Right.
Because you could pick in between. I guess it's not a thing anymore, so people might not even know what it is.
Yeah, well, I think, I don't know about what Monkey Chat does now, but I don't know if you can just do text or video. I haven't got on there yet, but there's new. But just for those who aren't aware, Omegle has actually been shut down as of, I think it was last year, 2023, summer of 2023, it got shut down. So the creator of it, obviously knowing all of the things that do happen, the grooming and luring, especially through Omegle, was this obviously wasn't what I created the site for. And, because of all the backlash that's happened, he wanted to keep it up, but he's like, I can't or I'm not sure, he or she, they, decided to just, I'm going to take it down. But
after all this time,
of course, there's been lots of other, apps that have breeded from that,
Yeah.
which we can get into a little bit later.
Totally.
But Omegle had been around for a long time.
A very long time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I had my iPod Touch, and Skype was also very big in my family because we used to Skype my nanny, my mom's mom, who only lives in Tawasin, but like we'd Skype her all the time.
Yeah.
So I knew about Skype from like a very young age. I had Skype on my iPod Touch, and there was a guy on Omegle, and he was like, "Do you have Skype?" And I said, "Yes, I have Skype."
Yeah.
And I can't remember his name, but he was from the Netherlands. Apparently he was 16, which I believe. This one I believe.
Okay.
Because we Skyped.
Right.
We Skyped. I'm like 11 years old. We Skyped face to face, so
Yeah.
it wasn't just text. And yeah, I saw this guy. We didn't talk. We just sat there
Oh, interesting.
and typing in the chat, but we didn't
Yeah.
say anything. And that ended very quickly because I was like, I'm going to get caught. I immediately knew I was doing something a little bit off.
Right.
I wasn't doing something, I was being sneaky.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt that, even though I don't think I felt like I was breaking a rule,
Right.
but I felt sneaky.
There was some sort of like butterfly spidey sense.
Yes, exactly. And I didn't like the feeling of feeling sneaky.
Yeah.
So that ended.
Mm-hmm.
Then my mom found it.
Ah.
Of course she did.
Yeah.
My mom is a sleuth.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, she found it. I think she found, like, I wasn't allowed to keep my iPod in my room. So I think she went through it and saw the Skype messages. And I got my iPod taken away.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. And then I just had the school iPad. And then I talked to you about this. I had a little grade 7 boyfriend. A very real boy. He existed.
Yeah.
I went to school with him. He went to the same school.
Yeah.
I hung out with him every day. And everyone, it wasn't just a me thing. Everyone in my grade found out how to use iMessage on the iPads.
And bypass some of those, I guess, blocks
Yes.
to that?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure all you had to do was enter an email because it would ask for an Apple ID, and all you had to do was change the email, and then you would have an Apple ID. And then you could iMessage using Wi-Fi.
Right.
Did that with him. We'd talk about school. Like, I'd tell him when I'd get home.
Yeah.
It was actually quite sweet. It was actually quite endearing.
Yeah.
And then, so I wasn't allowed to keep my iPad in my room. Of course, it's a school thing, whatever. And then I guess my mom looked through it too, being cautious.
Right.
She already caught me doing something sneaky. Of course, she's going to look. And she saw that I was texting my little grade 7 boyfriend. I got my iPad taken away. I got my iPad taken away.
Yeah.
And I think the mix of it all, of like what she had found on my iPod, me doing something I wasn't supposed to do on the iPad, that being using the text function. I wasn't allowed to hang out with friends after school anymore. I had to walk straight home. And I wasn't allowed to use the iPad at all at home. Doesn't matter like what it was for. I'd have to put it on the kitchen island as soon as I got home. If it wasn't on the kitchen island when my mom got home, it was not okay.
You would find out.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of where, the sticky situations for me kind of started. You know, I grew up in a household that was already a bit technology cautious. I was a very independent kid, like listing off all the things, all the aspects that kind of led me down into getting myself in an unsafe situation. It's just a mix.
So iPod's taken away, iPad is taken away. I'm curious, and by no means when I'm asking these questions am I questioning the parenting style or anything like that. Everybody has their own unique experiences and situations.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious, out of like those situations that happened, like what did that do internally? Like what did that, I guess, for lack of a better word, teach you?
Yeah. It taught me to be sneaky. It taught me to, be quiet and keep to myself even more than I already was. I mean, my childhood home wasn't the smoothest childhood home in the first place.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was going through all this type of stuff, my parents were in the midst of a separation.
Right.
One of my siblings was moved out. The other one was at home causing ruckus.
Yeah.
And so...
So naturally in that case, it's like, hey, the internet is this open world.
Exactly.
Where you can talk to people who feel the same way or are experiencing similar situations. Yeah. So it's this unfettered access, like parallel universe that you
Exactly. Yeah. And my parents didn't, as I said before, my parents didn't have to worry about me. And this isn't like, I was never neglected. I never felt neglect by my parents. Like, I was just a very independent kid, even playing outside. I had my best friend who lived 3 doors down from me. Half the time I wouldn't go knock on her door. I'd be outside by myself.
Right.
You know, like, I was already a reserved kid, but I kind of fell into a place where I was almost afraid to tell the truth because I didn't know the reaction that I was going to get.
Right.
So I said to you on our phone call, I kind of grew to be a bit of a compulsive liar as a kid, a young kid. I grew out of it pretty quick after everything kind of blew up in my face. But it was just so easy to, keep some details hidden or not tell the entire truth. Because if I tell the entire truth, what are they going to say? What are they going to think of me? Am I going to get in trouble? Am I going to get something else taken away from me?
Right.
I don't know what that could have been, my dolls.
Right.
but there's just so many factors that kind of made me crawl in on myself. And, I don't know, it's everything.
And it makes sense. And that's, again, I think a lot of people can relate to that growing up, where it's, I've known the past reactions if I do this thing. So I should not to do that thing, or say that I did not do that thing, because I know what's going to happen if I do.
Yeah, I also, growing up with the 2 older siblings, I was blamed for a lot as a kid.
Right.
I remember this one time, I won't go off on this for too long, but my brother cut off a charm off of my sister's necklace because he really liked it, and I think he wanted to put it on, like, I don't know, his own necklace or a belt or something. And my sister came into my room and started screaming at me. She started screaming at me. And I didn't know what happened. I started sobbing. My parents weren't home, so my siblings were looking after me, or they just knew I was in the house.
Right.
And I ran into my parents' walk-in closet, and I locked myself in there until my mom got home. And my mom got so mad. She's like, "Why would you do that to Em?"
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the nature. I was the kid. I was the baby. Like, I got messed around with. Like, they teased me all the time. My brother and I would get into, like, fist fights and stuff like that, and maybe not fist fights, but
at least 1 or 2 punches traded. Yeah.
But I was blamed for a lot. So I also I guess the comfortability of lying also came from being so defensive, like having to have, like, not wanting to always have to defend myself and convince people that it wasn't me. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Yeah.
So it's just a lot easier to just put it behind and dismiss and say, wasn't me, I didn't do it. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So we're in the stages of iPad and iPod have been taken away.
Yes.
We're saying, okay, let's learn to not get caught, basically, from there. So what kind of happens after that?
Well, my parents divorce. My parents divorce. Move into 2 separate homes. One moves across the bridge. One moves on one side of the bridge. The other moves on the other side of the bridge. Right. So all of a sudden, I'm, like, completely in 2 different places, all mishmashed in a week. And I start high school. So I start high school in grade 8. I didn't go to middle school. And I was still 12 years old when I started high school. I was literally a child in those halls with my own locker for the first time. Yep. Going from class to class is the craziest experience. And then I think I was only 12 for a couple of months because my birthday's in October. So I turned 13, and for my 13th birthday, my dad gets me an iPhone 5C.
Ooh.
A white. I wanted the green one, but they didn't have the green one, so he got me a white one.
Yeah.
And I had a conversation with my mom, and we talked about how I would talk to my mom to get some details clearer. Yeah. So we'll talk about that later. Yeah. But I talked to my mom, and she said she knew that at first I had thought that my dad had got it and my mom didn't know, and that's why she didn't like it. My mom just didn't like the idea of having a phone because of, obviously,
past experiences,
my record at this point.
Right.
But she knew that I was getting it, but she wasn't happy about it. So at one house, I had strict rules with the phone. The other house, I didn't have as strict rules with the phone. So my mom's, I had to leave it downstairs at night. I had to leave it downstairs at night. My mom knew the password. She'd go through it periodically. And my dad, I also would have to leave it on the counter overnight, but I could, whatever. My dad knew I had a phone, and that was, like, good enough, I guess.
Yeah. And I'm curious, just a question, like, what, getting that iPhone, like, what were some of the conversations that been had with you and your parents before getting that? If you remember at all.
It's, like, so long ago, but it doesn't feel like so long ago, you know?
Yeah.
I don't remember specific conversations. I think I just remember the attitude towards it, especially coming from my mom. She just didn't like the idea of me having one yet and still being so young.
Because it was 13, and 13, by the way, is the minimum age for most social media account creations as well. Yeah, we can get into that a little bit later, but but yeah, technically that is the age. But of a phone, conversation, a lot of people, usually ask that question. We equate it to a lot of the times. If you're handing your 13-year-old son or daughter an iPhone for the first time, we compare it to, they just turned 16, you give them the keys to the car and you say, go have fun. Like, what goes into learning how to drive?
Definitely.
And this is the same attitude we need to have towards these types of devices because of what, you actually can do. And who you can talk
I remember my mom, she had set up parental controls on it right away. That's what I remember. She did the one where if I downloaded any apps, it would go to her phone as well.
Right.
And so I bypassed that, though. I don't know how. There's so many different ways. I know. Later on, I remember this. Later on, I somehow turned it off through my phone.
Oh, interesting.
Or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, so somehow I got around it. But that's one thing she had on it was I would get all the apps I would download. Which obviously stopped because... Yeah.
Right. So yeah, those apps, and iPhone comes out. One of the apps you were talking to me about, because you said you had friends along that area who were just obsessed with these different types of apps and chat apps specifically. So we get into those apps. I
was the new kid to this new school as well. So I go from new to new. I have a really strong friend group at the elementary school, and then I move a bridge away to go to this high school.
Yeah, and that's a lot to go through, by the way. Like, parents are split up, one's across the bridge, and, oh, by the way, you're starting high school. That's a lot of pressure.
Yes, a lot of pressure, a lot of new things that I'm learning, going through puberty, just everything at once. And I had to meet a whole new group of friends. And at first, when I started at this high school, I didn't have the best group of friends. There was very obviously there were cliques, there were cliques, or however you pronounce it. But there was very obviously two kind of separate group of kids. There was the kids who are trying to act more mature than their age, and the kids that were 13 years old. And I kind of fell in naturally with the people who acted more mature for their age. One, because I truly believe that I was a bit more mature for my age because I had grown. I essentially took care of myself. And I had grown up like that for a long time. But I fell in with those girls, and they had phones. And I had just gotten a phone, and it was cool. And I had to know all the apps that they had. And I had to get their Snapchat, and I had to make a new Instagram, even though I wasn't allowed Instagram. I remember that. So, one girl in particular, I saw her using an app on her phone called Cat Chat. Cat Chat.
Interesting.
Yes. And she was...
You told me that one, and I was like, I never heard of that one.
It was taken off, I think, which is interesting. Because I also had a conversation with my mom, so I wonder if this is why. I wonder if I was...
Is she the one that's, in the back, deleting all these apps?
Well, no, I think it's... cat chat's no longer a thing whatsoever.
Right.
But anyways, yeah, she had cat chat, so I downloaded it as well. And I think I can't remember if my mom had seen it on her phone too, because obviously it would go to both, and I don't know if I made an excuse or not, which is like she would go into the app and see it. So I don't know if I had bypassed it at that point or what the situation was, but it was a chat app. So you could kind of like what Kik was. You could add random people, and they had profiles and like pictures of them on it, and it was like a dating app, but not advertised for dating.
Yeah.
So I downloaded it, and I quickly met a man named Isaac. I'm name dropping him.
Yeah.
To the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where it starts. It was just literally one instance with a friend and one app.
Right.
Yeah.
So one experience of, hey, you should download this app. A couple times of going through it, and how do you meet these people? Because it was through Cat Chat, not Kik.
Cat Chat. It was like kind of like the same format as Kik was. Like,
gotcha.
It like kind of relating it to that.
So are there like groups that you join, or chat rooms, forums?
No, it was all profile based.
Okay.
So I can't, like, I'm trying to picture it in my head. I don't know if it just gave you like a random list. I think you could add people on it because people had IDs. People had like a serial code almost, or a serial number. So I can't quite remember the layout of it, but it was profile based, and I think it was you can only chat with one person at a time.
Okay.
If I believe. Yeah. Well, not like one person at a time, but not in groups.
Right. No group chats, just single list of conversations.
Yes. Yeah. So that happened very, very fast, and I was kind of hooked into it because, you know, when you first get, like, even nowadays, like when you get your new phone, you're like, oh, I need to set it up. I have to transfer all my apps over. I have to make sure all my photos are there, my contacts. You're kind of sucked into it for a little bit. Yeah. Which is only natural. So the same thing back then for me when I had my new phone. I wanted to know what everyone had.
Sure. All
the different forms of social media. So I was just completely submerged into it. And yeah, so I started talking to this guy named Isaac on it. I told him I was 13. He told me he was 18.
Right.
Still a very large age gap.
Yeah.
I was freshly 13. And I cannot reiterate this enough. Freshly 13. I have my old high school IDs with me in my purse. I can show you what I looked like in grade 8. I was a baby.
Yeah.
I literally looked like a child. And yeah, so we would text all the time. I would text him throughout school. I remember my math teacher, me and my grade 8 math teacher hated each other because I was always on my phone.
Right.
I was always on my phone, and I would hide it kind of in my lap. Yeah. But I'd be looking down the entire time.
Sure.
Like, he's not dumb.
Yeah.
So I was just constantly on it, and I was constantly texting Isaac. And it quickly grew, I guess you could say, in the early stages, like, I guess you could say romantic, but it was very much like, you know, I like you, I kind of like you, that type of stuff.
And, like, on this profile, like, could you upload, like, a profile photo and, like, what you look like and everything? Yep. So you had an idea of what Isaac looked like?
Yes, I knew what he looked like.
And then he knew what you looked like?
Yeah.
Right? So, and then, the meeting comes, and so you say that relationship quickly turned into some romantic type.
Yeah, like crushy. A lot of, looking back at it now, love bombing at first, like we had talked about. Yeah. And then it quickly turned sexual, and it's a snowball effect. Yeah. And this is how it goes. Yeah. One after one after one after one, compliment after compliment after compliment, hook you around my finger.
Well, and that's you know, important, the love bombing that you mentioned. And, you know, you talked about this on our other call, but again, all those other kind of factors that had gone into you going into high school. Yeah. Right? You've got somebody now all of a sudden that is paying you so much attention. Yeah. And so many compliments and all of these things. And again, there wasn't necessarily a whole lot of conversation prior to that with you, as far as I know, about like what those boundaries or relationships should look like.
Yeah. So I didn't have the best, role model of a relationship in the household. Love you, mom and dad. Love you guys. But and they'll admit it too.
Yeah.
It was not good. I also grew up watching my brother. He had a long-term girlfriend in high school. They'd scream and fight in his bedroom when they'd be looking after me. I remember this. I think this is important to mention. I remember one time he was babysitting me with her, and they were up in his room, and I can hear them screaming. And he came out crying. He's like, "Sorry, Em, for the screaming." And I just went, I didn't hear anything.
Oh, wow.
That was just my natural reaction.
Yeah.
I guess that kind of says it all there. Like, I didn't have, even my, not to air out all my family's junk, but my mom's mom, my nanny, has been divorced for a long time, ever since her second husband passed away. Like, it's just a lot of things.
Yep.
I didn't have a concrete, I guess you could say my nan and papa are still together, so, but I didn't have a concrete relationship to look up to in the household.
Yeah.
So that definitely was a factor. That definitely was an aspect of, not knowing what was healthy and not knowing what was safe.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and then, here we are with this Isaac guy, and there's this new turn of events of, this is like a new standard of relationship that I'm not used to.
Yeah, exactly.
And it feels great because somebody's paying me so many compliments and texting them all the time. You're getting that dopamine kick, that dopamine hit of using the app, and as well getting all those compliments.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. It was just, when you look at it now, it is so obvious, but in the moment, you're right on the head with it. It was fun. It was exciting. I had something to myself again. Like we've been talking about, I like to keep things to myself. I had, I was independent. I liked my possessions. I liked my things. I didn't like to share. I was that kid.
Yeah.
So.
And at that time, that age gap didn't really mean much.
No. Because I was, he would text me something. I'd match his kind of phrasing.
Yeah.
I wanted to seem cool. I wanted, obviously, in any situation, like, where there is someone older, I wanted to seem cool. I wanted to impress him. And I wanted to match his level. Yeah. And this was a huge thing when things started to get more explicit and conversation. And this happened in no time at all. Like it was fun, and then it was whoa, you know. And this all happened in the span of a year.
Wow.
Or maybe even less. Maybe even like 8 or 9 months.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have, spoiler, I got the phone taken away by the end of the year. So it couldn't have been that long. But yeah, so things started to quickly become pretty explicit. And it was, again, I would periodically get that feeling of being sneaky, feeling like I was being sneaky and that I was doing something that I wasn't supposed to. But then I had Isaac in my ear and I had him complimenting me. And, first text in the morning, last text at night. I don't even know the significance of that at the time. Yep. I was freshly 13. Yeah, so it just, he would turn things sexual in the conversation pretty fast. It was like second nature to him. And I would return the favor because I wanted to seem cool. I wanted to seem like I was on his level. I was at his level of maturity. Yeah. And then I don't recall specific conversations, unfortunately, but it quickly turned to where it was pressurized. It was more manipulative. Yeah. There was more of a not peer pressure, but like that.
But kind of that emotional manipulation.
Yes, exactly. Right. And that came on really hard and fast. And there was a lot of guilt tripping. There was a lot of guilt. It's like coming back to me now. Yeah. I remember there was a conversation and he was just guilt tripping me that I didn't love him as much as he loved me. Yeah. Yeah. And one of my other friends, who was my closest friend at the time, she was kind of involved in this as well. She had Isaac's number as well. Right. And stuff like that. So they would text Just weird.
Yeah.
Just weird. They would text, and I wonder if, like, it was something was going on there, too. I'm not friends with this girl anymore, so I have no clue. But they tried to play it off at, like, you know, girlfriend and boyfriend and the girl's best friend. They're best friends, too. You know what I mean? But I remember telling her a conversation that we were having, and it was, I felt really bad and for no reason. And I remember crying. And I was like, yeah, it feels like this feels bad. And she's like, it feels like he's guilt tripping you. And I was like, guilt tripping? I didn't know, like, I knew what that meant, but I didn't know
the
like,
experience,
the
I guess.
Yes. I didn't know the experience, which is crazy. Like, I didn't even know what that fully felt like. What guilt tripping fully felt like. So yeah. Anyways, pressure was on. A lot of guilt tripping, a lot of emotional manipulation, and then it quickly turned into him pressuring me for nude photos. And I gave in, and I sent him quite a few. And it wasn't just at once; it was over periods of time. Like there's be one instance, and then it would calm down.
Right.
And then ramp up again, and then second photo. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So so this goes on for quite a long time, and then. So in our conversation, I hadn't remembered the exact details, but I had gotten my phone taken away for like a week or something, because I think I don't remember exactly why. Maybe because I was on it too much. I wasn't doing homework. I never
something unrelated to this?
Okay. I think so. Because if it was related, then this would have happened much earlier. But so I was gone, so I had no access. I couldn't text him. And then I got my phone back. First thing I did was text him. I'm back. And he was like, oh, wow. Guess what? I still have your photos. That was like one of the first things he said to me. And I was like, oh, that's so sweet of you.
Oh, no.
You know?
Yeah, no. It's just like terrible behavior for an 18-year-old to be, again, somebody who's freshly 13 in these conversations.
Yes, exactly. And I think he knew that he was being inappropriate. Like, and at 18, like, looking at me when I was 18, conversations, those are kind of risque. Like, those are kind of wild. But I wouldn't consider it inappropriate. Yeah. But knowing that I was 13 years old
changes the whole dynamic.
Exactly.
The whole dynamic
incredibly
changes.
Inappropriate and predatory. Yeah. Bottom line. And things kind of after I'd gone back after that week that I was gone, things just went back to normal. Not back to normal, but normal
to
for
baseline.
Isaac and I. Yeah. Yes. So and it went on for I don't even know for how long, but it felt like a year. Like that's why the year sticks out in my brain. Anyways, my mom quickly found out. She took my phone away one time. She would do this randomly. As I said to you, she would do this randomly. She'd take my phone away. But I kind of grew to learn when that would come up. I had an inkling. Like I knew when she'd start to get fed up with me.
Interesting.
So I would delete all the apps. Yep. I delete all the apps. I delete all my texts. And I would delete all my screenshots and photos. Wow. And I would delete the recently deleted folder, which was a new thing with this iOS too.
Yes, and that is a new thing, and that's something we tell investigators and parents a lot of, hey, and it's even more crazy now because it's not even the recently deleted folder, it's the hidden folder, it's the vault apps, it's the my eyes only, it's in the new update for iOS now, you can even have hidden apps or like hidden folders.
That's crazy.
So, and the Notes app, you can lock the Notes app.
Yeah, I have a locked note.
There's so many that you can use to hide these. So you were aware of them, and you're like, let me just cover all the bases.
Yeah, so I that would be my routine. And one time I forgot to clear my recently deleted folder, and my mom took away my phone. And I was pretty cut up about it this particular time. I think just because I wanted to talk to this guy, and I was sick of my mom taking my phone, Anyways, I used to bus to and from school, and I would get home before my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes me laugh because if I was a parent, I would see like this as a score.
Yeah.
But my mom used to park, and we had a parking spot right in front of our townhouse.
Right.
And the car wasn't there. She had parked on the other side of the parking lot for our neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. Somewhere out of sight.
Where I wouldn't have guessed. I paid it no mind.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, mom's not home yet. Whatever. I went in, and she stomps down the stairs. And she's like, get in the kitchen now. And I was absolutely freaking out. Like,
mm-hmm.
just part through down to my
right.
toes. Like, I not only was startled.
Yeah.
Because,
the thump down the
home.
stairs. Yeah.
And I knew she had gone through my phone.
Mm-hmm.
Immediately. I knew something was up with the phone.
Right.
She had her notebook.
Mm.
And she had my phone and her phone with her. And
mm-hmm.
she stomped into the kitchen. And it was like a police interrogation. It was so wild. My mom, she had taken notes of our conversations, taken notes of her conversation
mm-hmm.
with Isaac. So she got in contact with him. She called him. She got his phone. Yeah, this is what I cleared up with my mom.
Yeah.
She called him and was like, did you know she's 13?
Mm-hmm.
He said no. He tried to play it off like I was saying that I was either 18 or 20.
Right.
And he was like, no. She said she worked for a bank. Buddy, I was in high school. You knew I was in high school.
Yeah.
I would text you while I was in class.
Yeah.
And he was... So I thought he was 30. But my mom said she couldn't quite remember either. But he was either 28 to 30. So.
And that's how you found out?
Yeah.
That he was not 18.
He was not 18.
But he was closer to 30.
30.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, and I was a child.
Oh, my God.
And so she had called the RCMP.
Mm-hmm.
She had gotten contact. My mom works for one of the cities in
mm-hmm.
the Lower Mainland. So the police station is right across from her work.
Right.
So she
Pretty
got
easy
in
to hop
contact.
over there.
Yeah, she got in contact with the RCMP, gave them screenshots, gave them conversations.
Kudos to your mom.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and she gave them his phone number.
Yeah.
And she gave them his cat chat serial number.
Awesome.
His ID. So she did all the right things.
Absolutely.
My mom did all the right things. At that point in time,
mm-hmm.
I did not think so.
Right.
I was very upset. I was very angry at her. I was angry. I was embarrassed.
Yeah.
So embarrassed. And I was incredibly sad. And I was angry as well. I was ashamed because I had got caught, even though I think there was a big part of me that didn't feel like I was doing something incredibly wrong
mm-hmm.
because the conversations and the interactions felt so normal.
Well, that's where the word victim comes into play.
Yeah.
Because, of course, you're not going to know at the time.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Because, especially of his age, even 18 should know better. But,
yeah.
Oh, God, yeah.
Gives you the shivers, doesn't it? Yeah. Yeah, so, I was ashamed because I had got caught and I didn't quite know the severity of what I was getting caught for.
Mm-hmm.
I was embarrassed because of what those texts said, because I knew that what he was saying was outlandish,
mm-hmm.
and it was like along the lines, just to like give an idea, along the lines of what he would want to do to me and stuff like that, just inappropriate.
Yeah, don't have to go into details.
No. But yeah, so embarrassed because of that, embarrassed that my mom saw those.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Mm-hmm.
And uncomfortable. And I was sad because my mom was very angry at me. And when my mom is mad, you know my mom is mad.
Right.
Like my mom can get scary. So
mm-hmm.
it was, I was sad. And I was sad that, like, you know, that I had let her down. And I was angry because this had happened to me.
Right.
I was angry because I had one pulled over on me.
Right.
And that he was not who he said he was.
Mm-hmm.
And that he was actually almost 30. And that I don't consider this now, but at the time I would have said that he was my first love.
Mm-hmm.
which is god awful. But yeah, so she sat me down and she was like, did you know this? Did you know that? And it was very pointed. It was very pointed at me. And, you know, looking back at it now as an adult, and I don't have kids, but if I ever had a kid, I kind of think of what I would do differently naturally. Right. And this is nothing against my mom, because she did all the right things. My mom did all the right things and more. But it was very pointed, and I felt kind of backed into a corner. And I almost, as I said, I almost didn't know exactly what I was doing wrong. So I was like playing mind games with myself, trying to wrap my head around things. And she was like, did you know he was 30? I was like, whoa, no, I didn't. And I sat there, and my mom's just like, there was a lot of silence. And I think silence is a parent's biggest weapon. Yeah. One of their biggest weapons. There was a lot of silence and me just sobbing. And it all just kind of boils down to that I didn't fully understand. Yeah. And that I was still a kid. And that I was groomed. Yeah. I was fully groomed. And I know that nowadays that term kind of, people have a love-hate relationship with that term. A lot of people think that, you know, people don't use it in the right context, and which people don't, but you know, it's kind of thrown around. There's kind of getting into the bigger things. There's 2 types of grooming. There's sexual grooming, and then there's emotional grooming. Emotional grooming, you know, you can see it with it. There doesn't have to be a sexual aspect. It's a form of manipulation. And, you know, grooming is so much, you know, grooming is a form of manipulation where it's kind of knocked into you in ebbs and flows. So it feels normal. Yeah. And that it's rational thinking. Yeah. And that you don't question it. And there doesn't have to, as I said, there doesn't have to be a sexual aspect to it. There can be a normal, it could be through a friendship, a parental relationship, anything like that. But the sexual side is where, that's what we hear, that's where kind of grooming is associated with nowadays. And that's what happened to me. But yeah, so I got that phone taken away from me real fast. Yeah. Real fast. And I quickly fell into a very, very deep depression. I had a kind of I don't know what it was, like a full mental breakdown. After my mom kind of dismissed me, I ran up to my room, and I had like a bunch of handmade posters on my room of like my favorite bands. I had pictures on my walls. I had little trinkets everywhere. And I started ripping everything down. And sobbing, absolutely, like guttural sobbing. And I just could not I can't, you know, rationalize it now. I don't know why I did this and why I felt this way, but I felt like I could feel no joy. Like I wasn't allowed. I wasn't allowed to see happy things in my room. I wasn't allowed to, you know, let myself have 1 ounce of hope. I was up here and I hit all the way past rock bottom. And I grew really quiet. I grew really kind of constant. I still fell into, you know, the fear of telling the truth. Yeah. And I still had that big fear of the unknown, and that has carried on with me as an adult. Not to the same extent, but I still, you know, I get a lot of anxiety when thinking about, you know, how people think of me, or thinking about if I had said something wrong. And I overthink so much. And a lot of this stems from what had happened and what I had been through. And yeah, it was, my mom said to me, she's like, you have lost all my trust. And she said, I don't know when you'll ever get it back. Yeah. That must have hurt. Whoa. Yeah. That's crazy. Right. I was like, whoa. It hurt, and it took me aback, and I think that's kind of what prompted the big meltdown. I was like, whoa. Because all of it hit me in the face at once. You know, the severity of the situation, the severity of his actions, what he had done, and that I contributed to, and the severity of, you know, what had happened to me. It's just, yeah, it was huge.
Yeah, I don't even think, you know, sorry that you went through that even begins to cover any of that. It's just, it's a huge, and, you know, thank you for sharing. Like, that's, it's incredible to hear, you know, where you are now.
Yeah.
And as I said at the beginning, like, you have a really unique experience to talk to and like reach out to, not just parents and caregivers to explain kind of their side of things, but also, again, youth who are kind of around that same age and who have probably experienced very similar things that you have experienced. Totally. And throughout that, because obviously I want to talk about the resources and like what is out there now, and what those who may be in a similar situation could potentially do.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I wish that I had even back then was sexual education. We talked about this. I had no sexual education in my schools. I went to 2 different elementary schools and 1 high school. Not one of them had any form of sexual education except learning about the human body and bio.
Right.
And I know that my situation was inherently physical. It wasn't physically sexual, but I would have known what half the things he was telling me were, you know. Right. Like, I had no sexual education. There was, in schools, my situation was a bit unique. I went to an art school, so the format of my high school was different. We had a school counselor, but not very accessible. You had to be kind of like an at-risk kid to be connected with the counselor. And again, a little bit unique to my situation, but the school kind of turned their eye to certain things. So if they saw a kid that was struggling, you had to be at risk at first. Right. Unfortunately. But I think people kind of getting into the resources type of conversation, I think there has to be kind of a realization at first, before anything can happen, that this is still happening.
You need to recognize the signs first before going out and actually, you know, realizing that, oh, something's not right here. I need to go talk to somebody about this.
Exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely. And, you know, you brought up a good point because, you know, with the no education, like sexual education, at the end of the day, you know, you look at what makes a healthy relationship versus what makes a healthy online relationship. And they're the exact same things of respecting boundaries. And this is something that Tiana Sharifi talks about in her Exploitation Education Institute. And she's got fantastic resources on her website because, yes, it does revolve around a healthy relationship first. But recognizing those signs so that way you do have the ability to actually say something. So one of the things that was brought forward in 2012 actually was the Erase Report It tool. Okay. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
Okay. So this is something that's actually provincial wide in BC.
Okay.
So we, you know, at Safer Schools Together work with the Ministry of Education. One of the tools we provided, which is still up and available right now, is called the Erase Report It tool. So that's every school in BC has an anonymous way to report something, whether it's bullying, cyberbullying, whether it's, you know, threat-related behavior, or whether it's extortion. And one of the biggest reasons of why we brought forward this anonymous-based reporting tool is because if there are, you know, youth, again, in that high school, elementary school era, who don't necessarily have a trusted adult to come forward and talk to, because one of the biggest things, you know, of a youth a lot of the times is why they don't report information is because they fear the consequences, or they don't want to get in trouble, or they don't want to, you know, make it seem like they're snitching on their friends.
Exactly.
And that's one of the biggest things why we brand it as it's anonymous. You do not have to leave your name. You can send you can upload screenshots, you can upload videos, you have the availability to leave your name. But it's completely anonymous. And, you know, we see those types of reports very similar of, I'm talking to this person online. They are, you know, asking me for more photos. I'm scared. I don't know what to do. And, you know, I do have to say kudos to your mom for for knowing, number one, the deleted photos,
Yes.
like the double deleted, which
Yeah.
is, again, it's that to me shows that there is like, she cares, you know?
Oh, yeah.
100%. Because again, we see the flip side where there's nothing at all,
Yeah.
you know?
Totally.
So, and this is another element of, you know, people not knowing what they don't know. You don't know what you don't know.
Exactly.
And that comes with the education of knowing, you know, how a lot of these social media platforms work. And today, it's there's more that you have to learn.
Oh,
There's more that
totally.
you have to be aware of.
Yeah.
So in terms of, you know, back to the images itself, you know, these are some of the resources that I know of that, you know, that exist now. So the Race Reporter tool is another one.
Yeah,
Again, this is just
that's awesome.
in the province of BC. There is basically a new website that was created, I think, in the last little bit, but it's another kind of working with the provincial government. The website's called takebackyourimage.gov.bc.ca. And basically what it does is exactly like that, is of an image removal. So there's a couple different resources that are on that website, but one of the things that they actually have is a civil resolution tribunal.
Okay.
So it's a group of individuals, professionals, who will actually review the reports that are sent. And there's, again, anonymous reports. But as long as, again, that right information, like, again, like your mom gathered, the screenshots, the username, the IDs of those people, that's huge. That really, really helps. Or the name of the person, or maybe it's an in-person relationship and like you sent the photos, right? So basically what they do is they manually review all the reports. And what they offer is they send out, basically, they issue an image protection order.
Okay.
To order that person, basically, to either stop sharing the image, delete the image, or there's also some sort of financial compensation effect from that as well. And it's case by case that they review it. But that is like a legal order that they do send out. So if this doesn't happen, this is what is going to happen.
That's crazy.
So that's one, again, that's in BC, which is awesome to see that can happen. There's lots of other, again, reporting mechanisms as well. I talked about the Erase reporting tool.
Yeah.
Your mom did an amazing job of filing a police report.
Yeah.
I can't stress enough the importance of, like, anybody who's listening to this, file a police report, no matter how small. No matter how small you might think, no matter what. Because what happens is those reports get sent to the ICE unit, which is the Integrated Child Exploitation Unit.
Yeah.
And let's say that they have already got a file on this one particular individual, right?
Totally.
Your small little bit of information that you may put out may actually help. Right? Know that, okay, this person has also reached out. We have a case on this individual.
Yeah.
So reporting the police, filing a police report, I can't stress enough the importance of it, because there are groups, again, through the RCMP, like their ICE unit, and other municipalities as well. And that's not just here in Canada. That's everywhere, right? One of our other guys who we had here, Jed, he was, again, the child exploitation in his unit in Wisconsin. So they exist everywhere. Victim Services BC is another huge one. These are kind of more the bigger sources, but there's this website that we always promote, and it's called Take It Down. So it's by NCMEC, the National Center of Exploited Missing Children. Yeah. Basically what it allows you to do, so if you're under the age of 18 and you have sent an intimate image to whoever, and you're like, I'm scared of where this image is going to end up. Yeah. Because at the end of the day,
you don't know.
You don't know.
I don't know.
Right.
Yep.
And that's, it's a terrifying feeling to have. So what that website allows you to do is it allows you to actually choose those images and say, here's the image. Like, here's the intimate image that I sent. Yeah. The image actually doesn't go to the website, because that would be, again, the distribution.
Yes. Yeah.
You don't give access to the image, but basically what it does is it creates a hash value for that image, which is just like a long piece of text. Yeah. And that is like almost a fingerprint of that photo. And they work with many different social media companies and partners. So like Meta is one of them. There's different pornographic websites that they work with as well. If any that time that image is uploaded to that platform that has that hash value, immediately taken down and notified. Yeah. So there's different ways that these platforms, again, are working. Project Arachnid is a really great one. So Project Arachnid is basically an automated web crawler that actually will go out and detect child sexual abuse material for many different websites. And again, if like that's been reported to them, they know of that image. or that video, it'll get taken down. So there's
so many.
There's so many, and like
so many.
The tough thing is like sharing these.
I was just gonna say I've never heard about any of those.
Right.
And like thinking of how much has changed for those to have to be a thing, where they should have always been a thing.
Yeah.
But obviously, this isn't just a one-off thing. This has severity. This type of situation has weight to it, that these resources are resources for a reason.
Yeah.
And it just makes me think, like, if only if these resources were advertised in schools, or social places where online where kids go. Because if I saw that,
right,
I would have clued in
Yeah.
earlier. I totally would have clued in earlier.
If those signs, or if that conversation happened, someone came to your school and like did a presentation on some of those things, like that's what we do, because one of the other resources that's on the Erase website, which is it's an acronym, stands for Expect, Respect, and a Safe Education.
Okay.
That's the provincial approach within British Columbia, and one of the things that we offer through there is training through us. It's a family session.
Yeah.
So where it's a remote Zoom session, it's completely free. No, you just need to sign up. You don't have to pay anything. But we've designed this family session to be that, so that way parents, caregivers, and their kids can watch it at the same time. Because a lot of the times, the content is tailored to youth, at certain age grades, and then we have the parent side of things. But we all look at it together again, because it's happening like around dinner time.
Yeah.
You're going to have these conversations.
Totally.
We want them to have these conversations together.
Yep.
So we look at digital media habits. We look at the permanence of the internet, the digital tattoo, and the significance of those things, relationships and what those mean, and the consequences of things like cyberbullying and sexting and sextortion as well.
Yeah.
And just the one, again, if there's one person, if there's one individual that recognizes those signs and is able to report that, it's just a simple, again, a Google search of what resources are out there. But at any time, there's a lot more than there was that I'm aware of anyway. Because again, around this time, obviously around that this happened to you, I was not in this job. I was not in this.
No, and we've talked about Carol and Amanda. This is around the time that Amanda unfortunately passed away, So I think a lot of this this direction where things are going, where there are more resources, is thanks to her, especially in BC, how morbid that is. But, so we were still in the stages of even figuring out what this type of stuff was, what the words for it were.
Yeah.
But, I'm just thinking, like, what if I told someone? Like, what if I told a friend? But back then, everyone was so succumbed to social media and, talking to people. And you looked cool if you were texting all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but that goes to say, don't be afraid to tell someone. Because even if you think it's not going to do anything, even if you think the person that you're telling is untrustworthy or whatever, you know what? If something happened to you, if, you got in trouble, if they were threatening you, at least someone knows and you're not alone. Yeah. Like, that was my biggest thing. I had my two friends that kind of knew about it, but they were so into it as well that I didn't have a voice of reason. There was
I guess, a sense of normalization of that behavior.
Totally.
Right.
Total sense of normalization. But yeah, those resources are so, so important. And I think my biggest concern is that, like, how fast are things outdating themselves? Yeah. How fast are things growing to be irrelevant? Because things are moving so fast. We almost monthly we have something new coming up, and it doesn't matter if it's a new form of technology or a new device or new website or whatever, and it doesn't matter. There's always going to be something new, and it's important that we have people like you guys who are keeping up with stuff. Yeah.
Well, I can tell you those updates are what keep me employed.
Exactly. So
it is a full-time job trying to figure out all these different things. Like I mentioned, like the Lock Notes app, you can hide, and this is just within the iPhone. It's not excluding all the different vault tabs that exist now, and all these different ways of hiding. Like we even have a module on hidden photos and videos that
Yeah.
we've created. It's like 45 minutes long
Yeah.
because there's so many different ways, and
Totally.
it's crazy. So, so this is again a question that, or a point that you wanted to say for, you know, maybe somebody who was experiencing or is experiencing similar things that you did back then to maybe a youth or whoever. What would be something you would want to say to parents today, right now, if they do end up experiencing or know of, or what are some of those things that maybe you wish they saw a little bit earlier or experienced?
When I was thinking about our conversation for today, I was like, what would be my like main point that I want to get across? And my main point isn't even for the people that were or like me. It's for the caregivers, and that is that you cannot show your fear. You have to be strong for your kid, and you have to set up those boundaries with your kid from day one. You have to have strong communication. You have to have strong trust, and that goes for everything. It doesn't just go towards technology and social media. It goes for everything. If you have that open avenue of communication and trust with your kid, and that means you being honest too. That means you being truthful and you not lying to your kid all the time, because your kid's going to catch on. If you have that in your household from day one, before technology even gets introduced into the kid's life, then you should be able to have an open and honest conversation with your child about these issues, and them not feel like they have to lie to you, and them not feel like they're unsafe in talking to you about this, and that they're going to get in trouble. And my opinion's a bit biased, like I will say, but
I think it holds a lot of value, though.
Yeah, I think so too. I think there needs to be conversations about the dangers of social media still, even if you think that it's a one-off experience or a certain type of person puts themselves in those situations. It's not true. You know, it still happens. And I think you said something that kind of spoke to me in our conversation, that people are kind of like, oh yeah, of course, social media, of course, yeah, whatever.
So yeah, it's bound to happen. Of course it happens.
Yeah, that sucks.
Right.
It sucks.
Yeah.
It sucks, and it should have never been normalized. It should have never become something that is a normal experience of having a cell phone or having a social media profile on whatever platform you're using. And you know, unfortunately, I think it is so kind of numb, maybe to our generations, because it was actually very common. It was very common, and it still is going to be very common. Yeah. Unfortunately, because there are different ways that these predators and these manipulative people are learning to, you know, twist things. Yeah. Yeah, I think you really need to don't show your fear with your kid. You have to be the strong one. And if that means you making sure that you're well versed with what you have in your home, making sure you know what you're talking about. I mean, I'm not saying don't become an expert in, you know, all things tech. Yeah. I'm not whatsoever. But, you know, if you're going to have a home that is tech forward. I mean, my dad loves his gadgets and gadgets and gizmos. He has every little home toy that you can
Smart
have.
home,
everything. But he knows about it, and he's smart with that stuff because he's immersed himself in that type of stuff. He hasn't been scared of it. And that's a big thing too. Don't be scared of where technology is going. It's a lot.
Growing. It's getting more pervasive into our lives, and unfortunately, it's not going anywhere.
Exactly. It's a lot. It's overwhelming. Change is hard. Change sucks. My mom said, she's like, I don't like change. I said, I know, Mom. But you have to, if you're going to have, unless you take all tech out from your home, you get rid of your phones, you get rid of your smart TVs, you get rid of everything that has access to the internet in your home. When you have a child, your kid's going to have access to the internet somewhere.
Exactly.
It doesn't have to be in the home.
Yeah.
It could be at a friend's house. It could be the school computer lab, the library. It could be Grandpa and Grandpa's house. They have a family computer, and I like to go look at their Facebook.
Right.
You know, like, it's going to be everywhere. You cannot run from it, unfortunately. Yeah. I'm one of those kids nowadays. I still call myself a kid. I'm one of those kids that is, like, anti-social media nowadays. But there has to be conversations with your kid, and it's going to be uncomfortable, and it's going to be not very fun for the both of you. But if it's important, it's very important.
Yeah, it is. And I really want to thank you for sharing your story. It's an incredibly, it's a poignant experience.
Yeah.
And, one of the things I said on the phone is, as, the ramifications of, it happens all the time. Mm-hmm. There's real world consequences, and there's real world effects that happen from things that you've gone through. And the really unfortunate part is how common something like this unfortunately happens.
Oh, yeah.
And with, again, the new developments in technology, how easy it is, deepfakes, AI, where we are right now, it could be a whole other session with that.
Yeah.
And,
totally.
I think it's important that, stories like this get shared, because the learning from that is so incredibly important. So, Emily, thank you again so much for this.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It was really fun.
Awesome.
Yeah.